Hey, everybody, welcome. We're going to talk about Venus tonight. Venus, which has been retrograde since March 1st, is finally going direct on April 12th, 2025. So I thought it would be appropriate to talk about Venus because when Venus is retrograde, as it has been since March 1st, its qualities are more internalized. We get an opportunity to understand how we really feel about things, what we really value, what we see as beautiful, how we attract things, etc. And Venus packs quite the punch. It's more than just love and beauty, and we're going to talk about it tonight so you can make the most of Venus direct, which I'm really excited about. Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Nice to see you. So let's talk about Venus. But first, welcome to my channel if you're new here. Welcome back if you're returning. Hey, Casmar, nice to see you. So, yeah, Psychic Joshua. I'm Joshua the Psychic. You can check out my website, psychicsun.com. If there's anything I can do for you, all of my links are in the description below. So let's talk about Venus. It's more than just love and beauty. And as I said, it's been retrograde since March 1st. So we've been given a chance to really master Venus. I would suggest for this live stream, if you don't know your Venus, do yourself a favor and, well, either check your chart or, you can log on to one of the many free astrological chart sites, astra.com, AstroDentist. Plenty. If you just type into Google, free astrological chart, you'll be able to find your Venus and you'll be able to follow along. So that would be great. Hey, William, nice to see you. You recently joined my channel. Thank you. It's amazing. I appreciate that. So find your Venus because that's going to help you with this presentation. And you'll learn a lot, most likely. So Venus, besides having to do with love and money, it's an attraction magnet. So your Venus sign determines how you attract your experiences, how you attract people. It's also the environment determinant in a birth chart. So it shows the environment that you've been born into and what you really value. In addition to beauty and love, Venus is also a wealth indicator. Venus rules money. You got to remember, we have two parts of Venus, two signs that are ruled by Venus. You got the Libra, which is more about love and relationships and beauty, especially aesthetics. And then you have Taurus, which is about comfort and security and money. So they say, and it's debatable, but they say that Libra's beauty is on the outside and Taurus's beauty is on the inside. But obviously, there are Tauruses that are beautiful on the outside and Libras that are beautiful on the inside. But we have those two sides of Venus. So whenever you're thinking about Venus, think Taurus as well as Libra Venus, because both are very, very different. But Venus does rule money too. So it is all about your material well-being, Venus, right? And it represents external objects that impact your livelihood. The comfortable pillows that you have, the great food that you eat. So you can utilize your Venus to attract more wealth as well as love. Now, Venus sometimes can take an independent path. A Venus with few planetary aspects, meaning it's not making any aspects to other planets, that indicates somebody who's making their own way without others investing in their outcomes, right? So if you have a Venus that's unaspected, you get to have a tabula rasa. You get to do whatever you want with that Venus. However, if it's conjunct the sun or it's square Saturn or making a sextile, etc., you're going to probably get either struggle or some help, right? But when it's on its own, you get to do whatever it is that you want. You have this blank slate, and you can do whatever you want with that Venus. Now, the expression of Venus really depends on where it shows up in your birth chart. So above the horizon, the top part of your chart, are houses, say 7 through 12, right? And the bottom part of your chart are houses 1 through 6. So if you have Venus in the lower, if you have it below the horizon, that means that your Venus is going to be more introverted. Whereas if you have it in the above the horizon, i.e. houses 7 through 12, you're going to express that Venus on the world stage. For instance, If you have somebody who has Venus in the 10th house, which is above the horizon, they may actually work in beauty or work with women, right? Or something in terms of Venus if it's above the horizon. If you have Venus in the first house, you might be very, very beautiful, but you're not going to express those Venetian qualities publicly. It's going to be more of a private thing. So check to see if your Venus is above or below the horizon. If it's above the horizon, there's a strong chance that you express your Venus very outwardly, particularly professionally in your career. Or it has to do with your life philosophy, what you do on the world stage. Additionally, it's a healing blueprint. So say you go through a breakup. Your Venus is going to show you what healing methods work best for you. So if you have Venus in Sagittarius and you're heartbroken, you might need to go on an adventure. If you have Venus in Capricorn and you're heartbroken, then you're probably going to throw yourself in work. If you have Venus in Cancer, through a heartbreak, you're going to have to do a lot of nesting and resting and nurturing and mothering yourself, right? So it's going to tell you how you can heal. Say you have a Scorpio Venus and you're heartbroken. You're probably going to want to go through some therapy or in-depth psychology, right? So Venus will show you what healing methods work best if you're heartbroken or if anything's not going your way. Likewise, Venus is going to tell you what you need to do in order to get that love, in order to get that money. So it has, ironically, a Saturnian nature, Venus. And that does make sense because Venus is not, believe it or not, as a planet, very warm and fuzzy. Yes, it does have to do with love, but it can be very matter of fact, i.e., Venus having to do with money. Okay, well, how much money did we make this week? You didn't make any money? Oh, well, that's not good. That's bad. How do you look in this outfit? Well, that clashes with that. That doesn't look good. That's bad. Like, it's very matter of fact. Remember, Venus doesn't have any moons. So that makes it somewhat emotionally detached. Both Taurus as well as Libra, even though they're ruled by Venus, they're signs of emotional detachment. So if things are not right, if there's not balance being given in a relationship, for instance, Venus is going to have some kind of problem with that. So you can actually look at what you need to do by looking at your Venus and what aspects it's making to your chart. So let's talk about Venus throughout all signs of the zodiac. I would again check to see where your Venus is, or keep your ears peeled if you are interested in somebody who has a particular Venus. So Venus in Aries. Venus in Aries is the pioneer. They're the leader in relationships. They're the daredevil. They're drawn to adventure, challenges, and the thrill of new experiences. Venus is Venus in a fire sign, as it is in Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, can be very quick, right? Aries can fall in love very, very quickly, and they may not fall in love with their eyes open, right? So they need to look carefully when choosing a partner. Venus in Aries embodies boldness and assertiveness and love. They're always pushing boundaries, always going for it. They can't be with somebody who's boring or somebody who can't keep up with them. Venus in Aries likes passionate, spontaneous love. They love the thrill of new experiences and adventure, and they like to be the leader in relationships. So Venus in Aries is going to rather want to pursue you as opposed to being pursued by you. And you never want to tell Venus in Aries, oh, you had me at hello. Why? Because Venus in Aries likes competition. And if you give them what they want too easily, they're going to lose interest, quite frankly, right? Now, again, you have to look at the whole entire chart. This isn't just all Venus in Aries. You have to look at it. But typically, they're going to want the thrill of the chase. So you don't want to give up too easily, right? Or give it up too easily. They hate boredom, stagnation, being tied down. You could never tell a Venus in Aries what they need to do. They need somebody who is just as fiery and confident. And that's a key word for Venus in Aries is confidence. They do not want anybody clingy or emotionally dependent. They want to be fiery. They want to do what they want to do. They can be impulsive in love. Look at Liz Taylor, who is married 8 times, count them 8. I mean, 7 times she was married to different men, right? But twice she was married to Richard Burton. But still, with her Venus in Aries, and I believe Uranus was there, it's very, very, very fast, right? So they can be very impulsive, and that can lead to short-lived connections. They need to watch out for rushing in too quickly. I know this is the one, but do you know if it's the one? You don't always know, right? And they can burn out emotionally. The brightest fires burn out the quickest. So you have to, if you have Venus in Aries, you have to pace yourself and take a step back and really look at the big picture and the long term. Their vision of love, they seek bold, exciting, and active love. Somebody who values independence and excitement, but someone also who matches their energy without trying to control them. Venus in Aries, like Aries, typically wants one person to think the world of them, and everyone else can go to hell, because Venus in Aries needs that one person to reflect back to them who they are and their beauty. Then we have Venus in Taurus. Now, this is a very different Venus. And Venus in Taurus is like the Empress in the tarot. They're very, very sensual. Venus in Taurus needs to really feel amazing physically with their partner. They need to either enjoy good sex with them or enjoy sensual pleasures like dining out, etc. They love luxury, comfort, and beauty. They're grounded in their sensuality, and they seek stability and security in love. They value the simple pleasures in life. They want something that is nice and grounded. Alanis Morissette has Venus in Taurus, which is interesting, right? Because she's a Gemini. And it would make sense that she has Venus in Taurus, because what does she do? She speaks or sings about love. And Taurus rules the voice. And Taurus energy needs to utilize their throat chakra in order to have value, right? Your voice is your power, especially with Taurus, which makes sense why Alanis Morissette had a lot to say when her partners weren't stable, weren't grounded, and didn't live up to her expectations. Venus in Taurus is very loyal. Loyalty is a key word for Taurus. With Venus, they really need to have somebody who is very, very loyal. They want sensual experiences, fine wine, fine food, nature, harmonious, comfortable environment. They can't deal with instability, superficiality, and any sudden changes. They want the status quo. They want somebody they can get comfortable with and just enjoy their lives with. They can be prone to overindulgence, right? Going too far. And they can be very, very generous when it comes to presents and gifts for their partner, just like a Taurus moon. A Taurus moon is going to really shower their partner with gifts because Taurus is material, right? It's about material aspects. And similarly, Venus and Taurus can really go all out when it comes to gift giving. The opposite can be true with Taurus. Taurus can be stingy, or they can be big spendthrift. It really depends on the whole chart. And they can also vacillate between extremes. What they have to watch out for is becoming too complacent, right? Too fixed and stagnant in their relationships. But overall, Venus needs a steady, secure, indulgent relationship with comfort and beauty. They need somebody who's secure. So you don't need to play those games like you might play with Venus and Aries by not letting them know that it's you I want. With Venus and Taurus, you want to let them know, like, you are my one, you are my person, and I want to make this work. I only have eyes for you, right? Is what Venus and Taurus wants. So Venus and Gemini. So this is interesting. Venus and Gemini. Cher actually has this. Now, Cher is a Taurus, but her outfit choices, if you've noticed them over the years, are very, very Gemini. There's nothing status quo or traditional Taurus about Cher's clothes, right? Her outfit choices. She's always pushing the limit. She's always doing something innovative, creative, interesting, right? Or really curious, right? All of her outfits. She's definitely a wild dresser, which depicts and reflects her Venus and Gemini. So it's the communicator, the intellectual, the explorer. They crave mental stimulation. They want to be perceived as smart, and they want to be around smart people. They want active relationships. Oh, where are we going? Let's do this. Let's do that. They want to really make sure that they're with somebody that can keep up with them intellectually, and also that tit for tat, back and forth, right? Dialogue and debate. And they love intellectual conversations, things that are different. Variety is the spice of life. And that's the problem with Venus and Gemini. They can be very, very flirtatious. And I think that Venus and Gemini, they might not cheat, but they are probably at times giving another person the wrong idea because they're very, very flirty and they're very in the moment in a lot of respects. And Venus and Gemini, they have to watch out for deceiving in some respects because they're just naturally dualistic Gemini. So they could be flirting with somebody and then the guy winds up saying, "What are you doing talking to him?" "Oh, please, he's just a friend. It's all in your mind." Jeez. And that part of them believes it, but there's that duality with Gemini, right? They can't be bored. They don't like anything that is too routine, and they don't want anybody that's clingy. They're going to want their freedom. They're an air sign, right? They don't want to feel confined or have relationships that lack any sense of mental stimulation. They have to watch out for overthinking, overly flirting, getting bored too easily. So the onus is on them as well as their partner to keep things moving, right? Keep things exciting. They have to watch out for losing themselves in relationships as well as getting out of relationships too quickly because Gemini is a dualistic sign and they feel best when they're partnered up. Say a Venus in Aquarius or even a Venus in Sagittarius, they're going to get a coffee. They're going to go get a coffee. Whereas Venus in Gemini or Gemini energy is going to be like, "Well, let's go get a coffee. Come along. You want to come along?" They always want to be with somebody, typically. And they seek a dynamic, exciting love with constant mental stimulation. They want their independence, variety, and somebody who's just as smart as they are, which is no mean feat because Gemini is very smart. Now, Venus in Cancer is different. They don't really need, "Hey, Haley, nice to see you." So Venus in Cancer is very different, right? It's the caregiver, the homemaker, the protector. They want emotional depth. They don't necessarily need these long and involved conversations or for you to be the smartest person in the room. They want to feel nurtured. They want to feel secure. So make your Venus in in Cancer, if you're with somebody, make them feel at home. Or if you're wanting to get with a Venus in Cancer, make them feel at home. Likewise, if you have Venus in Cancer, make sure you're doing whatever you can to create a sanctuary for yourself, and that is going to help you manifest whatever it is that you want, right? Comfort and security is really important for Venus in Cancer. So they can sometimes marry below their status, be it in terms of looks or money, because they are going to want that security. At the end of the day, Venus in Cancer wants somebody who is secure and that can nurture them. They like creating a cozy, secure home and forming these deep emotional bonds. They value tradition, loyalty, and care. They want to be cared for and they want to care for you. They don't want instability. Cancer energy has enough instability, right? It's ruled by the moon, which changes so quickly. They can't deal with emotional coldness. They're way too sensitive for that in terms of love. And they don't like superficiality. They can also be too focused at times on mothering. And that is a problem, I think, for the women, maybe even some men, because when you're mothering your partner too much, it kind of makes it, it's not very sexy, right? It's not very sexy. But for some, it might be sexy, right? Right. I know when I work with Diane Krucka, she mentioned that she's a fragrance expert. She mentioned that vanilla, right? That's men's favorite fragrance. And why? Because it makes them feel at home. They feel like the smell of cookies, right? So it depends on the person. But with Venus in Cancer, you're going to want to make them feel at home. And if you have Venus in Cancer, you're going to want to make sure that you have a homey environment whenever you're with your partner. They can sometimes sacrifice their personal needs, being that overgiving mother type figure. And they have to watch out for codependent relationships. Cancer sometimes energetically, because they're just naturally insecure, they might foster a certain level of dependency, right? So if this person is dependent on me, they're not going to leave me. If I make them lunch every single day, they're going to get used to it. Oftentimes, this is not conscious. They're just doing this subconsciously, but they have to watch out for nurturing an unhealthy sense of codependence. They seek a stable, secure, emotionally fulfilling relationship. Halle Berry has this aspect in her chart. She has a lot of kids. She has 4 kids total, 2 are from one marriage, 2 from another marriage, and she cares about her children deeply, very, very deeply, she always says. So they desire deep connection, loyalty, and comfort, often with a partner who values family and tradition. They need somebody who's really secure. Now, Venus in Leo is very, very different, right? Venus in Leo is the royalty, right? The performer, the charmer. They want admiration. They want fun and fanfare. They seek a grand, spotlight-filled love, drawing attention with their charm and their confidence. So they love romance and luxury and being adored. You just got to make sure that the flattery is not false flattery, because that's just not a good thing to do. Sincere flattery is really nice, but you want to never give false flattery. That's very patronizing. And Venus and Leo won't like that very much. But you want to make sure that if you're with a Venus and Leo, that you're finding things to appreciate about them and telling them. They want to hear it. They want to be in the know. Leo energy wants to be in the know. They want to know how you feel about them, right? And they love performing. This is probably somebody, Venus and Leo is going to want to go to parties with you and show you off, right? Or maybe they'll want to be shown off by you. They want to be treated really, really well. So you never want to give, a Venus and Leo flowers from Trader Joe's. I don't know quite personally why anybody would give flowers from Trader Joe's. I guess it's a thought that counts, but you would not do that for Venus and Leo. Yeah, it is a thought that counts, but with Venus and Leo, they want really, really nice flowers. They probably would be insulted if you got them flowers from Trader Joe's, right? Or Russell Stover chocolate, right? They want the big stuff, right? They want to know that, oh yeah, he got me the best, the very, very, very best, right? Because it's showy, right? And that's what Leo is all about, showmanship. They don't want to be ignored at all. You could say, well, what sign does want to be ignored? Well, Venus in Aquarius doesn't mind being ignored at all. Neither probably would Sagittarius, right? They can be prone to ego issues, right? They can get very, very jealous if they don't feel like they're in control. So you want to make sure that you're assuring them, right? They need to watch out for being too dramatic. Fights with Venus and Leo can be legendary, right? And they can, on a bad day, demand attention constantly. And it can be very exhausting for whoever's with them, right? But if you're doing the right thing and making them feel loved and cared for, they probably will be more secure. They seek a passionate, playful, and glamorous love. They want to be adored and appreciated, and they want to hear a lot about it. They crave a partner who can match their enthusiasm and reflect their self-worth. So they want to know how much you value them, how much you love them, how beautiful they are, and how they're this and how they're that, right? And if you're a Venus and Leo, you need somebody who is going to really, really appreciate you. Oh, Pamela Anderson, by the way. So Pamela Anderson is a Cancer sun, right? But Venus and Leo makes a lot of sense for her, right? Because she was on Baywatch and she was always running on the beach in that red swimsuit, right? Very, very showy, very, very, very Leo, not very Cancer. So you can see that with her role on Baywatch. Venus in Virgo, Bridget Bardot, who is still alive. She's only 90. 90 is the new 70, right? She has Venus in Virgo, and she is a Libra born on September 28th, 1934. So Venus in Virgo is not happy in Virgo, right? So Venus is exalted in Pisces, right? But so Venus in Virgo is in its fall, meaning it's not best place. Virgo is a very practical sign, right? So Venus is not happy in Virgo. You got to look at the whole chart, but as a rule, Venus is in its fall in Virgo. It's not easy to express that Venus energy through that Virgoan lens. So the archetype for Venus and Virgo, it's the healer, it's the advisor, the perfectionist. That can be really tricky for Venus and Virgo. Not only can they expect perfection in their partners, but they can expect perfection in themselves. And what does that do? Well, that makes them not very confident, right? Because they think that because they're not perfect, they don't have a right to get their needs met, right? Which is not true. They can be very, very practical, and they want a very practical, supportive love. You know, there has to be some kind of practical component with it, like all Venus and Earth signs. They need to have something that is grounded and practical and serve some kind of practical value. They value service, growth, emotional depth, and they do find beauty in simplicity and reliability. You're not going to have to, get crazy in terms of gifts for Venus and Virgo. You can really just do something nice and special for them. Acts of service, for instance, are perfect for Venus and Virgo. They love helping others, sometimes to the point of their own detriment, right? They can be a martyr, right? A lot of that might come from their own inherent perfectionism, which makes them feel like they have to overcompensate, right? They love creating order in their home. They like helping people out, their partners out, and they love being helped out. They enjoy nurturing relationships through acts of care and practical gestures. So be practical with your Venus and Virgo. If you are a Venus and Virgo person, make sure that you have somebody, or you're going after people who, have their stuff together. They can't really deal with disorder, superficiality, or emotional chaos. Again, you have to look at the whole chart. If Venus and Virgo is aspected in a certain way, say it's a square with some Sagittarius that's strong, well, they might actually have a certain amount of disorder, right? But as a rule, they like things neat and tidy. And if you are a Venus and Virgo, you're going to want somebody who is a little bit more buttoned up, right? A little bit more prudent. You would never, for instance, want to make a scene in public with a Venus and Virgo. That would be bad, right? Because they want to be dance below the ceiling, below the radar. They want to make sure that their relationships have purpose and there's some kind of growth and really some kind of practical value. Are they getting richer every day? Are they getting healthier every day? They can be overly critical to their partner. They can expect perfection. But again, like we said, they can also be overly critical with themselves, which leads to them self-sacrificing. They need to avoid neglecting self-care. They can be a martyr. And the opposite of that is true. They can sabotage relationships at times by being too demanding, right? Needing a lot. Well, can you do this? And can you do that? And can you do this? And with all of these placements, their ways of self-sabotaging their relationships are all very, very different. But at the end of the day, they seek a stable, loyal, and nurturing partner. They value reliability and growth, but they need to watch out for being too critical of themselves and their partners. They can be very reserved and sometimes too practical. All the earth signs with Venus earth signs, they can be rather transactional. Now, Venus in Libra is very happy in Libra, of course, right? Because Venus is at home in Libra as well as Taurus. And it's no surprise that the absolutely beautiful, breathtakingly beautiful Grace Kelly had her Venus in Libra, although she was a Scorpio. Venus in Libra, Venus very happy in Libra. It's the diplomat, it's the charmer, the harmonizer. They seek balance, beauty, and connection. They excel in social settings. They know how to work a room, and they know the right things to say at the exact right time, and they always look beautiful. They know how to create harmony and draw others in. Libra is just really can be extremely charming. If a Libra wants you to like them, they got it in the bag. They're just well, not only are they ruled by Venus, but they're very intelligent. They know people, and they know the seeds that they need to plant in order to get what they want. A Venus in Libra, as well as Libra to a certain extent, can give you an idea and nurture that idea. And before you know it, you think it's your idea. You think it's your idea. They're extremely intelligent and they know relationships most likely better than the other signs. So they love romance, they love elegance, meaningful partnerships, they enjoy beauty and art and mutual respect. They want fairness, they want to feel as if they're balanced, right? They do not like conflict. They're probably the most conflict averse sign. So that can be a problem because they can tolerate a lot and things get out of whack, right? They don't like being isolated. They like to partner up. Well, where are you going? What do you mean you need time alone? That's strange. Yeah. That might hurt a Venus and Libra because they would, why not go together? Right? And they don't like superficiality, obviously. They don't like anything that's unfair or imbalanced, right? So it really depends on the Venus and Libra's view of the relationship, right? And remember, Libra is an emotionally detached sign. So if you're bringing X, Y, B, and Z to the table, and they're bringing A to Z, well, Libra, as they balance, if what you're bringing is so important to them, then they don't mind giving more because what you're bringing to the table outweighs, from their perspective, what they're bringing to the table, and it balances out. They can objectify love. Again, it can be very transactional. That means that they can look at their relationship as a means to an end, or as somebody who is to be objectified. Venus and Libra might be very Libra in terms of their relationships, meaning they can be somewhat shallow. They might want a piece of eye candy, or a trophy wife, or a trophy husband, right? And they're going to probably watch, they probably need to watch out for going for people that are beautiful but don't have much depth, right? You got to remember with Venus and Libra, sometimes the shiniest apples are the most rotten. So they need to avoid sacrificing too much for the sake of peace. Libra can, as an energy, especially Venus and Libra, can really go out of their way to make allowances, to compromise. So they have to watch out for that. They seek a harmonious, fair relationship with mutual respect and deep connection. They value balance and emotional companionship. You want to do fun things with your Venus and Libra. Now, Venus and Scorpio, very, very different. Jennifer Connelly, I don't know if you remember her from the 90s, the 80s. She's still beautiful and she's still around, but she's a Sagittarius. And you can actually look at her eyes and you can see that Venus and Scorpio, that penetrating gaze that Scorpio has. Scorpio has a very, very intense look with their eyes, irrespective of what color it is. And I think you can see it there, right? So they're the intense, right? The intense person, the investigator. They are probably the type that will do a background check on you before they go on their first date. And they're very good researchers. They are transformative, right? They're the transformer. They bring deep emotional intensity, focusing on powerful, transformative relationships. Now, remember, Venus is detrimented in Scorpio. Why? Because Venus is ruled, one of its rulers is Taurus, and Taurus is the opposite of Scorpio. So when a sign is in the opposite of its rulership, it's detrimented. So Venus in Scorpio has to work a little bit harder to find her stride in Scorpio, right? It's not easy. So it brings deep emotional intensity. Intensity is really key. So if you're looking for a relationship that is, cool and breezy, that's not Venus and Scorpio. They're going to want intensity. They seek truth. You got to be honest to your Venus and Scorpio. They need honesty. They will probably not be interested in you if you're at all superficial, because they're just very honest. Scorpio, as a rule, is just extremely honest. And if they can't be honest about something, they're going to be silent. And the depth that they want in relationships can sometimes bring them challenges, right? This is like the star-crossed lovers, right? With Venus and Scorpio, right? Because Scorpio is all about transformation. So sometimes they choose experiences that really push them to the brink, right? Loyalty, emotional depth, they love. Mystery, they love that, although they probably don't want their partners to be too mysterious because they want to know what's up. They enjoy uncovering hidden truths and forming passionate, transformative connections. I feel like there's an exploratory aspect with Scorpio, but it's not like Sagittarius, who might explore another country. Venus and Scorpio wants to explore each other's bodies, right? Sexually, they want to be explorative. They want to understand your psychology. What makes you tick? Why are you the way you are? So Venus and Scorpio can be very intense. They may ask you questions that make you feel quite uncomfortable. And if you have that Venus and Scorpio, you're going to want to know what makes your partner tick, right? They will not tolerate superficiality, dishonesty, or anything that's shallow. And they're not going to like being controlled, although at times they're going to be perhaps very controlling with you, right? They don't want to feel emotionally unsafe. Scorpio, as a rule, has enough problems with their vulnerability. So you want to make sure that if you have a Venus in Scorpio, you're making them feel secure, and really be honest with them and back out. Don't betray them, because you'll probably live to regret it. They can be prone to power struggles, possessiveness, obsessiveness. They can sometimes get something in their heads. And that's going to be always the trick with Venus in Scorpio. Is there something going on here, or is it all in my mind? So they need to watch out becoming overly consumed by relationships. Again, Scorpio is a very extreme sign. They often get the reputation for being sluts and whores, but really, Scorpio is about extremities. So Scorpio might be chaste for a while. They might go chaste for a few years, and then they might really let it rip and sleep with anything. Or they could vacillate, right? They need to watch out for becoming overly consumed by relationships, indulging in unhealthy attachments. Again, think that Romeo and Juliet, love beyond death, right? We saw that in The White Lotus. If anybody watched The White Lotus, the characters, I forget their names, Chelsea and Rick, she said, we're soulmates. And he was a Scorpio in the film. And yes, they actually, well, I won't tell you what happened, but it was love beyond death, let's just say. So their vision of love, they seek an all-encompassing, transformative love that challenges and that grows them. They value loyalty, trust, and emotional intimacy. You got to be honest if you're with a Venus in Scorpio, and if you ever have Venus in Scorpio, you're going to want somebody that can go really deep with you, right? And they have to watch themselves when it comes to losing themselves. They can be so into their relationship, again, that level of extreme. They can sometimes push the limits emotionally. And if you're going to be with a Venus in Scorpio, well, I would say you want to be able to match their intensity and really discuss values with, not just values, but boundaries. What are their boundaries? What are your boundaries? And that's going to help you if you're with a Venus in Scorpio. Now, Venus in Sagittarius is very, 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 very different. So even though the opposite of Scorpio is Taurus and the opposite of Sagittarius is Gemini, the sign before a sign or after a sign is like a rebuttal to that sign. So Venus in Sagittarius, Venus in a fire sign, they're hard to pin down, Venus in Sagittarius, right? Because Sagittarius energy, it's the archer, right? So they see their target, they aim, they hit their target, and then they go on to another target, which is a problem in terms of love at times, because once they get you, it's like, okay, well, what's next, right? There's a certain wandering aspect to Venus and Sagittarius. It's hard for them to not go after new goals. They're aspirational, right? So when Venus is in this sign, it's going to be important for whoever they're with to go on adventures, to really aspire to that next level in the relationship. How can you explore and go on adventures with your partner? Otherwise, Venus and Sagittarius will likely get very, very bored very easily. They're the philosopher. You got to have good philosophical conversations with your Venus and Sagittarius. It might not be a matter of pinning each other down on what do you believe, because Venus and Sagittarius wants to theorize, right? They crave freedom, excitement, expansion, and love. They want partners who share their passion for exploration and personal growth. You'll probably travel with your Venus and Sagittarius. Maybe you'll write books with them or movies, or doing something that really expands yourselves in the world. They love adventure, independence, intellectual connection. They want freedom, though. You can't like really pin down a Venus and Sagittarius, or they're not gonna really be attracted to that, right? Because it's fire. Fire wants to spread. It wants to grow. It wants to be fire, right? They don't want to be restricted. They don't want to keep things stagnant. You got to give them their freedom, for sure. They can be overly idealistic. Now, Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, and Jupiter expands whatever it touches. So the problem at times with Venus and Sagittarius, it's kind of ironic. They could have a fairly casual connection with somebody. Maybe they date 2 times, and Venus and Sagittarius may think that this relationship, because Jupiter expands, they might think it's much bigger than it actually is, that it's much more intimate than it actually is, because that Jupiter energy expands whatever it touches, right? Likewise, the opposite can be true in that you could be with a Venus and Sagittarius for a long time, and if the fire's not there, they can say, well, we just decided to move on. There's no bad relationships, just some that last longer than others. So it can be very, very extreme. Very extreme. And Sagittarius is very, very fast. So they can fall in love very, 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 very quickly and fall out of love just as fast. They can be overly idealistic, especially if you have Venus and Sagittarius making an aspect to Neptune, conjunct Neptune, especially. And they can, like Gemini, have a lack of staying power. Because again, they want to, okay, I hit that target. What's next? They need to watch out for being too impulsive and not following through on commitments. Like all the fiery Venuses, if they're not excited about something, it's going to be really hard for them to bring it. That's just not how they operate. They have to follow their excitement. If you're not exciting to them, I mean, it's very, very, very tough for a Venus and Sagittarius to be in a long-term committed relationship unless every single day you guys are going on that next adventure and determining what's next for you two as a couple. They seek a dynamic, open, ever-expanding love, a partner who shares their zest for life, adventure, and intellectual curiosity. But Venus and Sagittarius can be very idealistic. And if you don't measure up to their ideals, they might sour a little bit, right? So I think with Venus and Sagittarius, you got to make sure you're talking about your ideals with them, but also, being realistic as well. Tina Turner had Venus in Sagittarius, and she was a Sagittarius as well. And, she was with Ike, and goodness knows they had a lot of adventures, never a dull moment. And that's the thing, I think, with Venus and the fire signs, that if there's drama or there's like major conflict, they may indeed stay. Because why? You're keeping their fire going, even if it's negative, right? So I think Venus and all the fire signs have to watch out for being in these toxic relationships because, well, it's fire, right? Fire needs to be expressed in a positive way. Maybe it's through exploration and adventure, or publishing, or broadcasting, or doing cool things together, right? Or learning together, something like that. So you want to watch out if you have Venus in a fire sign for being attracted to explosive situations like Artina. But what's love got to do with it anyway? Venus in Capricorn is very, very different, right? Venus in Capricorn is probably the most likely Venus to marry for status. They want somebody who is going to be good for their career, good for their income. Even though obviously this is January Jones, who I always thought was so beautiful. She starred opposite John Hamm in Mad Men. She's just such a beautiful, beautiful face she has. But to give you another example, Brad Pitt, Sagittarius, has a tremendous amount of Capricorn in his chart, particularly Venus. So with his Venus in Capricorn, if you notice, who did he go after? Well, he went after people, Jennifer, Angelina, who could help his career. At the time when he was with Jennifer Aniston, she was at the climax of her enterprises with Friends, right? And that, of course, enhanced his status. Same thing with Angelina Jolie, right? So Venus in Capricorn is going to be very practical. in terms of love. They're not going to be with somebody who makes them look bad, makes them lose money. It's all about, on a very, very practical level, how can they look better or gain more power with whoever they're with, right? Very important for Venus in Capricorn. So they are the provider. They want to, they're very traditional. They're the authority. They're probably going to be the one that sets the tone in relationships. And they want to build. They want something that's stable. They want to make sure that they're growing with their partner. They seek lasting connections that align with their long-term goals and provide security. They want a solid foundation. They want practical love, financial security, things that increase their assets. They're not going to want superficiality, a lot of fanfare. This is very, very opposite than Venus and Leo, right? Venus and Capricorn is going to really ask, is this practical? Is this helping me get closer to my goals? And they want commitment. They want to know, okay, we're going to do this. This is what's going to happen. They can be overly focused on career and status, and that can not only make them neglect their partners, but their emotional needs. And then, their relationships can become very transactional. Well, I bought this. Aren't you going to buy that? I did this for you. Are you going to do that? So, there's an earthiness, a dirtiness with Venus and Capricorn, so to speak. And they have to watch out for being too controlling. But at the end of the day, they want a committed, practical, enduring relationship. Somebody who's nice and grounded, somebody that they can grow with and build with and really help them enhance their legacy. Capricorn wants to provide, right? They want to provide a legacy. They want to give something to their heirs, right? They want to leave something behind that shows that they made a big difference in the world. So if you're with Venus and Cap, you got to help them make a difference in the world, right? They want mutual respect and an emphasis on shared goals and a stable future. Definitely have a plan if you're with a Venus and Capricorn. Venus in Aquarius, Sharon Stone. Sharon Stone has Venus in Aquarius, although, of course, she is a Pisces. So I think this makes a lot of sense if you think of Sharon Stone with her films, Basic Instinct and Sliver. There's a sort of iciness to Sharon Stone, a certain interesting sexiness, right? But it's icy. So it's very ice princessy, Venus in Aquarius. It's probably the most detached Venus. They're the innovator, the rebel, the visionary. They're drawn to very unconventional relationships. They want freedom, and they want to definitely explore intellect. They love conversations. They want somebody who's smart. And they're probably going to be the most likely Venus to want to, do something unconventional. Let's have a throuple, they might want. That would scare the bejesus out of a Venus in Capricorn, right? So with Venus in Aquarius, you have to be prepared to do things that are a little bit different. They want somebody who's smart, though, individualistic. They want to progress socially. They typically are going to care a lot about social causes. They're going to probably be for the underdog. So you want to make sure that, you're aware of what their interests are in that regard. They don't want any kind of restriction, right? They want to feel very, very free. And Aquarius is all about friendship. And, I feel like the basis of all relationships, good relationships, is friendship, but particularly with Venus and Aquarius, you want to be their friend. Because at the end of the day, that's what's going to make Aquarius stable and good for you and you for them, that level of friendship. So you need to have that friendship. Out of all the Venuses, I think with Aquarius, they're most likely to get out of a relationship and still be friends with their ex because they're detached. So they don't have really any holding pattern, right? But that detachment can be a problem in the relationship. They can be somewhat disconnected, especially physically, right? Aquarius is ruled by Uranus, contemporary ruler is Uranus, and that has to do with mental trauma. So when people have mental trauma, there's almost like this disassociation from their bodies. So they can at times be cold fishes. Again, you have to look at the whole entire chart. But you need to, really get them out of their heads at times and get them more into their bodies. But again, if they have a Taurus rising or something like that, well, they're probably much more into their bodies than a typical Venus in Aquarius. They have to watch out for ideals, and they can be a little bit too freedom obsessed, right? They want a love that's based on friendship, that's unique, intellectually stimulating, and free from any societal constraints or mores that they don't agree with. Sometimes Aquarius just rebels for the sake of rebelling. Like you zig and they zag, right? But they need somebody who's forward thinking. And then, of course, we have Venus in Pisces. Michelle Pfeiffer, Taurus. Beautiful Michelle Pfeiffer has Venus in Pisces. Now, Venus is exalted in Pisces. Now, that means that Venus is best expressed through that energy of Pisces, perhaps through that energy of agape. That doesn't mean that Venus in Pisces doesn't have issues, because Venus can be so in love and romantic. It can sometimes miss the forest from the trees. They can sometimes delude themselves, right? They can fall too deeply in love. It's the dreamer, so they have to watch out for disillusionment or being deceived, right? Or deceiving themselves, right? It's the healer, the mystic. They crave emotional depth, blending creativity with compassion. They seek soulful, transcendent connections. They find beauty in the unseen. So I think Venus in Pisces is very like high priestess. Like they feel very connected to their partner, even if they're not in the same room, right? Or in the same country. They love creativity, creating with their partner, emotional bonding, exploring each other's bodies and souls, right? They're all into spiritual growth, and they need romance. They need things that are romantic, beautiful, artistic, emotionally rich environments. And they're very, very sensitive. And they can lose themselves. They can lose themselves in their relationships. So they have to watch out for becoming too overly idealistic. And they need to watch out for emotional dependency because they can get lost. They want unconditional spiritual love. They want a connection that transcends time, the ordinary. It's like Scorpio, but a little bit more dissolving, right? Because Venus in Pisces is a mutable sign. So they can be very, very, very flexible. Whereas Venus in Scorpio is a fixed sign, right? Scorpio, so they can be very constant, very stable. But Venus in Pisces might really go very, very deep into their lover, only to have that fall away as they easily transition into another love or some other interest. But they want something that transcends the ordinary. They want magic. Give them magic. And if you are a Venus in Pisces, make sure you're going after those great connections. I think Venus in Pisces is probably the best manifester of all the signs that Venus could be in. Remember, Venus is all about attraction, and Pisces has this great ability to, well, they're very, very evolved, right? They're the most evolved sign in the zodiac. So they can imagine things and allow themselves to surrender. Their gift is surrender. So essentially, for all of us, what we should be doing is focusing on our ideals, like what's the best case scenario in the different areas of our lives, and then put it in the back of our minds, forget about it, and then follow our impulses. And Pisces does that the best. So Venus in Pisces is great for manifesting. So I hope this was helpful for everybody. I would definitely check out your Venus sign. And if you're interested in somebody, well, find out where their Venus is, because that might make a big difference. That might make a big difference. So do check out my website, psychicsun.com, if there's anything I can do for you. And if you're catching this live, well, I'll see you tomorrow for This Week Astrology at 1 p.m. Eastern. Thanks, everybody, for joining, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.